Welcome to the Functional Health Coaching Show, where we are here to support and answer your questions so that you can help people on a deeper level get real results and grow your health coaching business. Do you have questions you want to ask live on the show? You can call in every Friday at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 1-347-637-1378. Are you looking to increase your credibility and grow your health coaching business using functional lab testing and data-driven protocols so that you can confidently solve health issues? Well, we have the course for you. Go to fdn.today/show to learn more and sign up today. Okay, let's join today's episode.
Hey everybody, what is going on? It is Friday, December 11th, and this is your host, Ryan Monahan, on the Fantastic Friday Call. I'm sad to report we don't have Brandon with us today. He's out of the office, but he'll be joining us next week. He's taking some well-deserved time off, so I'll be flying solo with you guys today at an altitude of 5,000 feet here in Denver. And actually, we woke up to snow on the ground, so not to be unexpected here in December to have some snow. So it usually melts pretty quickly, but it is cold out there. It's been in the 30s, so I'm grateful to be staying inside and warm and talking to you guys all today, and hopefully taking some calls, getting some hands raised, getting some good questions, and generating some good conversation like we always do. So welcome to the call. You know where you are. You are at the Fantastic FDN Friday Call. And we are the premier health coaching program, guys, in the world. We had a company meeting earlier this week and talked about our mission for 2021 of being a household name in health coaching. And that's really what our ultimate audacious goal is to really get out there and change lives and expand our reach and scope as much as possible, and recruit this army of functional practitioners that are ultimately going to go out there and heal the world, right? We know that there are lots of people out there that need this approach, that need our help, that are falling in the cracks of the medical system and aren't seeing results, right? So a lot of us have been there ourselves as FDN practitioners, and that's what led us here to begin with, is that we are not seeing the results that we want to be seeing with medications and surgery. And it's not to say that those don't occasionally have their place, but it's really this functional approach that it ultimately excels at actually restoring the body from the inside out, rather than just treating symptoms and suppressing symptoms, which is not what we want to be doing, because that does not produce long-lasting results. It doesn't ultimately get the person feeling optimal and running on all cylinders, and that's what we want to see ultimately in the long term. That's what I've experienced myself. FDN has changed my life. FDN has changed the lives of many of my clients. I've been able to use these tools for my friends and family, and then ultimately we hope that those the change that we help instill in others, they're able to go out and live their best life. And this is something that Brandon and I have talked about a lot, is not just helping people to live a life free of symptoms, because it's so much more than that. It's also about having people go out and take that newfound sense of wellness and energy and transform the world, right? It is to live their best life and to fulfill their potential. But it's really difficult to do that if you are burdened on a day-to-day basis with chronic symptoms. And so many clients come to us, right, having tried nearly everything. They've tried the medical route. They've even tried different yo-yo diets, and they've tried maybe some yoga or meditation. And they're trying to piece these pieces. They're trying to put these puzzle pieces together on their own. But we see this happen all the time, where they're hitting a wall with their symptoms. Right? Clients come to me all the time, having hit a wall with their symptoms. Right? They've done like a paleo diet, and it didn't really produce the results that they thought it would, because they don't have someone like myself or yourself as an FDN practitioner or graduate to help them to put all of the pieces together in a comprehensive way, use all of those good detective skills to really put all those puzzle pieces together, run the lab work, kind of look at the crime scene of healing opportunities, and to be able to determine the best course of action with some hard data. And I know for myself, years and years ago, when I was looking at different health coaching programs, this is really, in my opinion, what set apart FDN from all other programs, is this ability to have some actionable kind of hard data to look at. So that way we're not just guessing, we're not just throwing a dart at the board. We actually have some information that lets us form a roadmap, right? And that helps us to get out of the cycle of trial and error and not just be kind of willy-nilly guessing and saying, oh, maybe this supplement will work, maybe this dietary approach will work. In my experience, I did that for more than a decade, and it didn't work for me. And it wasn't until uncovering or discovering FDN that I was able to finally see a more sustainable, long-lasting, and permanent improvement in terms of my overall health and moving it in a significant direction where I actually could understand what the underlying causes were, right? So we know we hear this term all the time in our world that we want to get to the root cause of our chronic symptoms. For most of our clients, there is not just one root cause. There are several, right? So even that term can be misleading to say find the root cause, because for most people, it's going to be a combination of poor diet and lifestyle, hormone imbalances, gut infections, toxins in the system, and so food sensitivities, right? We can go on and on. But unless you're really putting this all together simultaneously for someone, they may not see the results that they want to be seeing. So a couple quick announcements here. We're going to get to the graduates in just a moment, which I'm excited to announce as always. But there is a lab announcement here that I want to bring up. And taking a look here, so I'm looking at the FDN newsletter because we want to make sure, guys, we're getting our lab orders in before the holidays. So that deadline, just so you're all aware for those listening, is before December 21st. With the holidays approaching fast, we want to remind you guys to get some of these important deadlines. So keep in mind that if you are wanting to get your test kits shipped before the holidays, you do want to place the order before December 21st, not December 1st, big difference. And, we are potentially expecting some slower response times during that period between December 24th and January 4th. So make sure you guys get your lab orders in before then. Another little announcement that there is going to be a Dutch test lunch and learn on December 17th. So that appears to be next Thursday? Yep, this coming Thursday. And that will be at 12 p.m. Pacific time, which is 3 p.m. Eastern. And we'll be joining Dr. Carrie Jones and Dr. Debbie Rice, both from Precision Analytical, to answer your Dutch hormone questions, guys. So check out the FDN weekly newsletter for the Zoom link to that. This is just one of the many ways we provide ongoing education. And this is why I'm always pushing people and encouraging them, maybe a better word, to join the AFDNP Professional Association, because this is really where you're going to get the most value in terms of your ongoing education, for clinical support, for detective hours, for different segments that Jennifer Woodward and I are doing, every couple weeks or so between detective hour, and we run another segment called Quick and Nerdy, where we dive into a specific topic for a shorter period of time. Lots of ongoing business training and marketing support. Just earlier this week, Dr. Jess Petros was on talking about how to open up the detox pathways when you're dealing with someone with Lyme disease. They were to contract COVID. So that's the kind of amazing clinical support we're getting on an ongoing basis when you join the AFDNP group. And those Dress for Health Success webinars are exclusive to that group. So this is how you stay sharp, guys, is joining that group and attending these webinars and improving and, constantly working on your ongoing clinical education. Jennifer had actually just mentioned recently that they had broken down the cost of joining AFDNP, and it was like less than not just a Starbucks coffee a day, but less than, I think she said, a Dunkin' Donuts coffee a day. And it's been a long, long time since I've gotten a Dunkin' Donuts coffee, but I can't imagine it's any more than $2. So it's an amazing value, and you want to be there. That's where it's at. That's where all the FDN professionals are hanging out. The people that are really serious about their craft and their trade, and looking to really step up their FDN game. So the cost there, I had mentioned it being less than a Dunkin' Donuts cup of coffee a day. It's only $100. Basically, that's how the subscription breaks down. It's $100 per quarter, or about $400 a year. So someone had I mentioned that because someone had recently thought it was $100 a month, and we were like, no, it's way less than that. That would be $1,200 a year. This is $400 a year for that membership. So I think we ultimately want to make it the goal for all FDN graduates to be a part of our Association for FDN Professionals, so that you've got support from people like myself and from Whitney Morgan in the group that are answering your clinical questions, and that you're staying up to date, you're staying sharp, and you have the latest information you need to excel in your practice. So that's really it, guys. Not a ton of announcements this week. Just wanted to mention that, give a shout out for AFDNP, mention the Lunch and Learn with Dutch Test this coming Thursday, and also that lab deadline. So what's coming next. We've got some graduates to announce here, which I'm super excited about and super proud of all these guys for completing the program. I've always said that doing the FDN program was the best investment I ever made in my life, and I hope you all feel the same. So we've got 5 graduates to announce today on December 11th. Barry from Austin, Texas. So congratulations, Alexis. We've got Ashley Apple. She is coming to us from Nevada City, California. We've got Lisa Schaefer in Westchester, Pennsylvania. We've got Shalene Zaplatal. I hope I pronounced that right. Please forgive me if I didn't, but I believe I got that right. And she's in Bavaria, Germany. So coming to us from overseas. That's amazing. Shalene, congratulations. Then we've got Jane Justice in Manhattan Beach, California. So congratulations, guys. Super proud of you. All right. So congrats again, guys, for completing the program. Like I said earlier, we're looking to make FDN become a household name and expanding our FDN army of peaceful warriors that are going out into the world and kind of preaching this gospel of diet and lifestyle and holistic living, right? We are the premier global health program, guys, and FDN is a no-brainer in my opinion. I have known other FDN practitioners that have done other programs on top of FDN, and people always come back to us and say, this is by far still remains the leading edge, top notch, best health training program I've ever done. So we've got some questions here. So we'll go to those and then we'll come back to see if any callers would like to chime in and ask some questions. So I had some questions that were submitted to us by Dawn Haynes. She is one of our amazing educators and mentors for the FDN course. So the first question she submitted here was from Angelique. And she had written here, I have a client who is going to try to get pregnant in January. She will be through her H. pylori protocol of Matula T, but only halfway through her Biocidin and Olivirex protocol. She will not be able to do the Amazon antifungal supplement at the end either, as all of these supplements are probably not recommended to take during pregnancy. I will definitely recommend she stay on ProFlora, eat fermented foods, and eat root vegetables for probiotics or prebiotics. I was just curious if you had any other ideas on safe things to do or take during pregnancy to help support her gut and overall health. She is currently taking folate. Not sure if there's a better option than Amazon AF, which is their antifungal. Okay, yeah, great question. And so she sounds like to me, if I'm getting this correctly, that she is just about to be done with an antibacterial and anti-H. pylori herbal protocol. She's trying to get pregnant, so she's not going to be able to complete her protocol. And I say this because antimicrobials are generally contraindicated during pregnancy, and it's not something I would really personally recommend doing or sign off on, especially not wanting to stay within our scope of practice and not kind of trying to play doctor, right? And I would be concerned that something like Amazon AF or Amazon antifungal would potentially interfere with pregnancy and could potentially cause adverse reactions or adverse outcomes. So that's something that ultimately she would want to discuss with her midwife or OBGYN or primary care provider to see what would be safe to take and not to take during pregnancy. But to veer on the side of caution and safety, I generally recommend my clients that are pregnant or intending to get pregnant really try to stick primarily with diet and lifestyle and not to mess around with too many supplements. Now, say, she had recommended, referred to in her question about fermented foods and root vegetables. And I would say generally, if we're talking about food-based approaches, it's not as though we're introducing anything kind of foreign to the body, like herbals, right? Like, so something like berberine or oregano oil or, olive leaf extracts, some of these antimicrobial herbs that we commonly use as FDNs, we are introducing something that can be foreign to the body and caustic and can induce even a stress response, right? When we're killing off infections, whether it be yeast and fungal overgrowth, H. pylori, parasites, that is a stressor on the body, right? And there can be toxins that are released which can induce a stress response. So we can be putting the body too in kind of a sympathetic fight or flight response, which is not something that we want a pregnant woman to be doing. We want to be inducing lots of stress reduction. We want that pregnant woman in this case, to be super chill, right? We want her to be relaxed as much as possible and not be pushing her body too hard. So my recommendation here would be to stay away from that Amazon AF supplement if she is pregnant or intending to get pregnant. You can stick with, fermented foods, eat root vegetables that are high in prebiotics, right? Lots of, cassava and sweet potato and butternut squash and all those good foods. In terms of her question about supporting her overall gut health, I would say lots of stress reduction can go a long way. We often overlook the role that stress can play on breaking down the gut, right? But we know that when we're catabolic, when we're in a stressful fight or flight state, that it can cause intestinal permeability and can cause breakdown of the mucosal barrier all by itself, even without gluten or pathogens in the system. Just having that stress response can do that, right? So I wouldn't discount the role that stress could play in gut health. I think bone broth would be potentially a really good option here. We know that it has lots of gut healing properties between the gelatin, the glutamine, the glycine, the proline, all of these amino acids and proteins that can really help to repair and rebuild the gut lining. So I'm also, some of you know that I'm also a certified AIP coach. So I do have that AIP background, and I am a big fan of using bone broth as a gut healing strategy and using diet and lifestyle whenever possible. So, it will be good that she's gotten through her H. pylori and kind of antibacterial protocol. At least by January, she has done a significant amount of work. And at that point, you do the best you can. You move forward with a more gentle approach. Maybe even have her take some organ meat capsules for some additional nutritional support. You had mentioned folate, which is vitamin B9. And of course, I'm hoping that's methylfolate and not folic acid, which we know is the synthetic form and can actually be harmful for pregnant women. So be careful there that she's not taking a synthetic folic acid. But if it's organ meats that are in question, that's going to be really rich in natural methylfolate. Eating lots of leafy greens are going to also be a really good idea. And actually, 80% of the folate in leafy greens are already in the methylated form, meaning that's in the bioavailable form that your body needs. So that's another good option on top of the folate she's taking as a supplement to help support her pregnancy, is to be eating lots and lots of uncooked leafy greens. So arugula, spinach, Swiss chard, lettuces, whatever it might be, right? Lots of leafy greens every single day can be a really good idea to support folate. So yeah, that's just kind of my general take on that. I'm definitely not a fertility expert, but I do veer on the side of caution and try to avoid, especially avoiding antimicrobials during pregnancy. I feel like that's not a good idea. Now, some people I have seen are okay with using certain binders like Pectosol C because it is food-based. Technically, it's from apple pectin. So like low doses of binders might be safe to use as long as you're being kind of cautious with that. But again, I would still kind of get the okay on any potential supplements you plan on using from the client's practitioner. So hopefully that helps you, Angelique. I know Brandon, if he were here, he would probably agree with me that we want to be on the safe side and use very minimal supplements with pregnancy and working with diet and lifestyle as much as we can. Diet, rest, exercise and movement, stress reduction. Don't forget, guys, that it's not all about supplements, that using those types of strategies can go a long way and will often get your client 80 to 90% of the way there. And also remember that the word is supplement, not replacement, right? So we don't want to jump to supplements first without having those foundations in place. All right. So I had another question that was written in, but it looks like I do have a hand raised. So I'm going to unmute you, and I'm coming at you 858. So let's see what we got here. 858.
Hey, Ryan, it's Brandy. Hey, Ryan, it's Brandy.
How are you?
I thought I would call in and co-host with you now that I'm finished up with my other stuff. So that was a great answer to that question. I work with a lot of women with infertility, and I probably would have said the same things. So. Awesome.
Oh, awesome. I'm glad I nailed that because I would admit that working with fertility is not my niche.
It was good. I probably would have answered the exact same way.
Well, very cool. I'm glad that you joined me, and I'm glad that I figured out this whole switchboard thing right in the nick of time. So far so good.
Awesome.
Wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. Yeah. Well, awesome. So, Brandy, we've got another question here that was written in, and I could read this one off. And, feel free to join me here. Let's see. So I've got a question that was submitted from Adrienne Stein. And she said her first question is regarding probiotics. If a person is taking probiotics or high doses of probiotics, what will that affect, if anything, on the results from the GI map? Is it better to be off of them to see what the natural balance is without supplementation? Okay, so that's actually her first question. Then she has a second question, which is related to saliva hormone testing. She says, I have used saliva hormone tests in my practice before, and I was very interested to see that the recommendation was to let the saliva pool naturally before collecting. Instructions say the results are invalid if you collect by creating suction or pursing your lips, but you can swish or hold your tongue to the roof of your mouth. Could you please explain that? So in regards to, let's take that latter question first. I presume she's referring specifically to the Access Hormone Panel, the Stress and Hormones Panel from Access Labs. So if I have this correct, what I know Dr. Gen has relayed to us through meeting with him is that you are supposed to kind of let the saliva almost kind of drool out the side of your mouth, rather than trying to force the saliva into the vial. Brandy, do you know more specifically about the test collection there question?
Yeah, so Dr. Genn has been using this type of testing for a really long time, and the technology that they use at Access Labs is actually very sensitive, and so if you're pulling it through your teeth and forcing it out, you can actually pick up debris from your gums into the saliva, blood if you've got a little bit of gingivitis or any sort of like dental infection. And when you do that, that can actually affect the results. And so what you would see on the test results would be a pattern of seeing several of the markers abnormally high or abnormally low. And if you see that, that can be an indication that potentially your client didn't collect it correctly and that the sample may have been contaminated. And so it's picking up those extra particles or even the little bit of blood in the saliva, and it's artificially making those markers out of range. So that's why he recommends doing it by letting it pool so you're not getting anything extra into the saliva in the test sample.
Well, I am so glad that I had you to answer that question today because that was more than I knew. So awesome. Yeah, seems like the name of the game there is to really take your time with collecting that sample. Mm-hmm.
For sure. And he said, like, you can carry that little tube around in your pocket and it might take you half an hour to get enough in there, and that's totally fine. And you want to kind of instruct your clients that way so that they can get the most accurate test results, to just take their time and do it that way.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Very good to know. And of course, if you're collecting for a Dutch test, you're going to be collecting a urine sample. So the rules would be different there. Unless, of course, you're doing the cortisol awakening response. That's a saliva sample. Is it not with the cortisol awakening version of the Dutch test?
It is. I mean, I probably, with that sample, I'm not sure if they use the same sensitivity as Access Labs, but I mean, I would just assume, that's the first time I had heard it, but I would just assume that like the technology is getting better. So the less contamination you can get into your samples, the better, because you're going to get a more accurate read on your test results.
Very cool. Awesome. Well said. So we've also have this question then regarding probiotics. And she said if a person is taking probiotics, she wanted to know if it will affect the results of the GI map and if it's better to be off of them. I think what she's getting at is, do you want to establish sort of a baseline before you're running the test results? So I'll go ahead and take that one. And Brandy, you can add any of your thoughts or opinions on that. I would say it probably is going to be better to be off of those supplements, at least for a couple weeks, if not a full month, before running the test in order to get a good baseline. But it really might just depend on your workflow with that client. So the thing that I might be most concerned about is that probiotics can actually improve the terrain in your gut environment, which is ultimately what you want. And it might actually help to crowd out some of the dysbiotic bacteria, for example. So you might not get as accurate a result there if you had been taking Proflora or Megaspore for a month before the test. You might not get as accurate of a reading on that side of things in terms of some of those overgrowth organisms of bacteria. At the same time, that's the outcome that you ultimately want, is to be improving the terrain of the gut. So if you were going to be having a client on probiotics, and there's a need, clinically speaking, in terms of improving their main complaint, like let's say they're dealing with constipation or diarrhea or IBS, you might see a need to get them on a probiotic sooner than later, rather than waiting for the test results to come in. And that would be okay, so long as you understood that you have to interpret the results sort of in conjunction with the fact that they've been on certain supplements and interpreting those results accordingly. Just like if you are running a Dutch test for a female that was on birth control, you would need to take that into account when interpreting their results. And actually that came up this morning on Detective Hour, that we had a client that was on an IUD, and she had very, very low estradiol and progesterone, which was not surprising given that she was on birth control, but we needed to interpret those results sort of accordingly, in sort of a relative sense to what she had been, either on supplement-wise or what she had been doing to prevent pregnancy and so on. So, yeah, I would say, like, ideally, you want to kind of minimize some of these supplements before you're running a GI map, especially on the antimicrobial side of things or on the antibiotic side of things. Like if a client had been on a round of antibiotics, you probably want to wait at least a month or so before you're running a GI map test, so that you give the gut a chance to kind of settle and reach a baseline in order to get a good result. And the same would be probably said for probiotics too.
Awesome. I don't actually have my clients stop taking them when we do the retesting, because I do like to see, if they've been on probiotics and we've been doing a gut protocol, I want to see like how their gut responded. And you'd be surprised. You're still going to get retests come back where that good gut bacteria still looks dysbiotic, like it still doesn't look like it's in balance, which that could be helpful too for, how do you direct them going forward after a retest? Like maybe you have to switch it up a little bit. Maybe you try a different probiotic or something like that. So in some instances that can be helpful, but it's just taking that into account. If your client was taking it when they did the test, you want to keep that in mind because that is going to affect what comes up on the test results.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, all very good points. And another thing that comes to mind too is this whole question of prebiotics as well. So there's always a question in my mind of to what degree the probiotics are actually creating a significant change in the microbiome. So, for example, if you kind of dig deeper into some of the clinical literature on this, we find that probiotics don't necessarily populate the gut with bacteria, although they can to some degree, but they're more so causing or resulting in immune modulating effects in the gut environment, meaning that it might help to result in an increase in certain gut metabolites, or they might even help to shift the immune system in a beneficial direction, or maybe even with Megaspore and some of Microbiome Labs' clinical literature has been shown to reduce leaky gut. So they ran one study that showed that Megaspore was able to reduce leaky gut by 60% in just 30 days, which is pretty remarkable. But when it comes to actually like increasing certain strains of bacteria that might be non-detected or deficient on a GI map, I'm also always thinking about prebiotics. And this is maybe kind of expanding on your question a little bit, but it's really prebiotic fibers, like say in the diet, or even, prebiotic supplements that are going to help selectively kind of feed certain commensal bacteria and cause them to proliferate, even more so, I would say, than probiotics. So, we want to make sure that the client has plenty of prebiotic foods in the diet. That can be accomplished in a number of ways, but if we're taking kind of a Terry Walls approach, we want to make sure they're getting a broad diversity of plant foods and vegetables in the diet and getting adequate amounts of those foods to be able to be feeding the gut microbiome, right? We could also consider certain prebiotic foods. Like one thing I'll often have my clients do is use grain banana flour. If you're actually, when you're taking a banana that's unripe, it's really, really rich in prebiotics, which are these, and I really refer to prebiotics as kind of like the fertilizer for the microbiome. So that's what's really going to help your gut to be happy and healthy. And if you're producing lots of those healthy gut postbiotic metabolites like butyrate and that sort of thing. So those are some things I consider too on the dietary side, in terms of kind of helping someone's microbiome to shift around a little bit. So maybe more than she asked for, but still some potential helpful information on the diet and lifestyle sort of things, because it's always, probiotics can be great, but we also want to be considering what we can also do naturally with the diet through fermented foods and prebiotics, and that can get you a long way.
Cool. That's good information. I didn't know on the prebiotic stuff.
Awesome. Yep. And there's also a class of prebiotics called resistant starch. And this is a really affordable way to feed your microbiome, is if you cook white rice or white potatoes and then you cool them down, once they've been cooled in the fridge, the nature or the structure of the starches change into what's called a resistant starch. And as the name implies, it sort of resists actually being digested, but instead it feeds the good bacteria. So you can make a really cheap sort of prebiotic or resistant starch at home by cooking white rice or white potatoes and then cooling it. And you can even reheat it after it's been cooled, and it will still retain that resistant starch quality. So that's pretty neat too. Awesome. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question, Adrian, on the probiotics. And just kind of like recapping that, I would say, yeah, probiotics can affect the results of the GI map for sure. And just like Brandy said, when you're looking at a retest, that can help you guide your course of action going forward with maybe the dosage of the probiotic, maybe switching to a different kind of probiotic depending on what the need might be. And that can help inform your strategy. Cool. So, Brandy, it looks like we have a caller. I'm going to go ahead and try to yeah, we've got a 404. So let me go ahead and unmute.
Hi, Ryan.
Hey, 404, are you with us?
Yes.
Hey, what's going on?
Yeah, so I'm just starting out, hopefully next month, as an FDN, and I just wanted to get some feedback on which tests you offer clients. I know that the labs are a little different now that BioHealth's gone, and FDN practitioners seem to vary slightly from what they kind of run their basic labs on clients, whether it was like their 3 labs or 5 labs, and like which labs do you usually do for new clients and kind of why?
All right. Yeah. So good question. And what I would say right off the bat to that is I realize there's a temptation with newer graduates. I see this a lot, to get a little bit overwhelmed with all the testing options out there, and especially considering that even on our own medical director test menu, there's, I think, over 100 different tests that we offer, which can be really great and helpful in certain particular circumstances. If you're, say, running your core labs and there might be something that you need to help continue the investigation and look a little bit deeper. But what I always say to those just kind of starting out is to stick with the labs that are taught in the course and to stick with what you know. You especially don't want to be running, say, like a Dutch test, and if you have no experience with interpreting it and, being overwhelmed with where to start with a client. And honestly, I could even say from experience that, yes, the Dutch test has some additional bells and whistles that the Access Hormone Panel does not. And that's something that, you can eventually kind of investigate or learn about over the long term as you get comfortable with it. But it doesn't always necessarily mean it's presenting you with unique or newer, different healing opportunities that Access Hormone Saliva Panel wouldn't show you, right? So more isn't always better, especially when you're starting off. Because keep in mind, this is what Reed talks about all the time, but it's really the dress protocol that's going to get the way there. And I really do mean that as someone who's been practicing FDN for about 5 years now, it's that the diet and lifestyle changes are what's going to get that person 80, 90% of the way there. And in a sense, I've come to see over time the lab work as almost kind of like a motivational tool for the client to get them to make those changes, right? As that almost being the most important aspect of it. And what I mean by that is you're obviously going to come up against this situation where you run a hormone panel, you run a GI map, and you're going to see a client with lots of inflammation, high cortisol, hormone imbalances. You're going to see they're going to have parasites or H. pylori or candida, right? And what does that ultimately tell you? Do we want to just jump in there and treat all those infections and hormone imbalances with supplements and protocols? No, that's really not what the essence of FDN is all about. We want to look at all that dysfunction in the body and say, okay, what is this telling me about that person? This is someone who's probably up to this point lived a very stressful lifestyle, has probably been on multiple courses of antibiotics, has probably been exposed to all kinds of inflammatory foods, and they've been eating a standard American diet, and maybe they work a job that they hate, or maybe they're in a stressful relationship. Maybe they're still drinking a lot of alcohol. Maybe they're still getting to bed at midnight every night. And you can go on and list dozens of examples of that. But those are all signs of someone that's been living a diet and lifestyle that's not conducive to supporting their biology. And the lab tests are just a reflection of that, right? So you're using those labs as like a teaching opportunity to help them understand that their diet and lifestyle is not sustainable, and using that as a teaching opportunity to give them a set of tools in the form of a dress protocol that they're using as really like the golden ticket, or I sort of call it like the roadmap to healing, like the keys to the kingdom, right? Because it really is how you stay healthy. And it's actually not just a protocol, it's a lifestyle, especially if someone wants to remain healthy long after they've worked with you, right? So if you look at it from that perspective and you take a broader lens, the labs are kind of like to be used as sort of a teaching opportunity to help them to make those changes, and for them to see like, wow, and now I see how my diet and my lifestyle and all my stressful job or whatever it might be is leading to all this dysfunction in my body, and I really need to make some changes, right? That's going to be like the most transformational aspect of what you're doing as a coach, right? So to that, I say start with what you know. Don't necessarily get like FOMO, like test FOMO on like all the other tests out there and bells and whistles. Like, yeah, you can learn some of those as you go, just like I did. And it wasn't overnight. Like I gradually learned the Dutch, and I gradually learned the GI map when we were still running the BioHealth test, and then I gradually learned. I got deeper into organic acid testing and so on, and even hair tissue mineral analysis definitely was not overnight. And even still, even with all that information, it just all still traces back to diet and lifestyle. So it's sort of like another way to say that is like there are many roads to dress, but they ultimately all lead you back there, right? Like all roads lead you back to dress. So don't feel like because you're not running a Dutch or an HTMA or whatever it might be that you're not able to help the client. It's absolutely not true. Like as a fresh graduate, like you are equipped with the knowledge that you have to be able to help people without necessarily, running like all the other sexy labs out there. Just, you can, like I said, you can learn some of those other ones over time. You'll maybe find some little hidden nuggets here and there, but it's never going to change the fact that that person needs to make some change, some permanent change with their diet and lifestyle. I guess that's kind of what I would say. I know that's more of like a general answer, but my answer is always pretty much the same: is start with the labs that you know, and the ones that you're comfortable with.
No, that's really good advice. I appreciate that. I would ask, do you usually recommend running an MRT and a metabolic typing test on every client? Or, because I've heard differing opinions on the MRT. It's kind of like, oh, well, if there's that dysbiosis and kind of like digestive issues going on, like they're going to be sensitive to a lot of foods, and they just kind of like need to run drafts really before they like really worry about like eliminating all of these foods. Like just running drafts will have such a positive impact alone. And then other people say like, no, they really need to run an MRT to see like which specific foods are triggering them, at least, now. So
you could, I hear where you're coming from. And yeah, in implementing a dress protocol, like I said, it is, even if you, in theory, you had no lab work and the client just absolutely couldn't afford it, like I would still be willing to work with that person and implement a dress protocol. I would say it's going to be far from ideal. Like if you don't have some lab information, like you might be sort of shooting in the dark a little bit. And so I'm hesitant to take an approach where I sort of cherry pick labs based on the client's symptom presentation, because that's kind of like playing this guessing game. And the thing is, like, we just don't know what we're looking at until we have the labs in front of us. So I'm at a place in my practice where I will only run, 5 foundational labs with a client. I won't just run like a single lab with a client. I mean, my packages are designed that way because I feel like without having all the information I need, I'm going to be doing them a disservice, and that's not going to help them. It's also going to reflect poorly on me if they don't see good results. And from a business perspective, I don't want anyone saying, oh, I worked with this guy, Ryan Monahan, and didn't really get anywhere with it. Like, it wasn't really that helpful.
Right.
And so in order to give someone this like really transformational experience, what I tell them right off the bat is like, hey, we're going to run a bunch of labs and we're going to get all the information we need so we can end the cycle of trial and error, really be as comprehensive as possible and leave no stone unturned. And honestly, like what I tell clients on a qualifying sales call is this is going to be the most comprehensive investigation into your health that you've ever done. How does that sound to you? Usually that statement kind of really resonates with people because up until that point, they've never had someone that's been willing to put all of these puzzle pieces together for them and really listen and really, be like their health detective. So to your question, yeah, I would say if you're not running an MRT or say like a Vibrant Wellness food sensitivity panel, I know some people are fans of one or the other, and they're going to give you maybe slightly different perspectives on food sensitivities. But if you're not running one of those food sensitivity panels, yeah, you could be missing on a potential source of inflammation. Yeah, you could be potentially missing on something that's like perpetuating that inflammatory gut environment, the leaky gut. And so, yeah, you might implement a dress protocol, but maybe you're only getting kind of part of the way there, right? So, yeah, I'm always a much bigger fan of getting all the information that we need to get the job done. And, you'll come across this plenty of times where a client will have objections to the cost. But that's kind of where our job comes in as coaches to remind them that it is an investment and not an expense. And they could spend far much more money in not having the right information and continuing to bounce around to other practitioners after they work with you, right?
Right.
And I want to be really like the last person that a client has to see, so they can finally find some real answers and kind of be able to get their life back.
Absolutely.
What do you think, Brandy? Anything to add to all that?
Yeah, I mean, I do things a little different, but that's only because I live outside of the U.S., so I don't have access to the MRT working here, but I always run a food sensitivity test because, like you said, even though they might come up with a lot of foods that they're sensitive to because of something going on in their gut, removing those foods, even for a period of time, is going to help them feel better. So I've had lots of clients where we've done that, and it's good foods, like things like turmeric and lettuce and like things that are healthy, but we took it out for a period of time because it did come up on the food sensitivity test results while we did dress, while we worked on the gut, and then when they brought those foods back in, they didn't have a reaction. And sometimes just taking those foods out alone can make a really big difference. And like Ryan, I am at the point now where I don't work with clients either unless they run all the tests because, again, they're not going to get where they want to go. And then, that's going to look bad on you as a practitioner. And it's just easier for them to say, it's in your best interest for us to have all the information at the start so that I can help you the best to my ability with all of the tools that I have. The other thing, like Ryan had said too, with the food sensitivity test is that they need to see it on paper before they're willing to take it out of their diet. So that time, sometimes that alone is one big reason to do it. It's just they need to see it on paper to go, oh, okay, I really do need to stop having dairy, or I guess I do need to stop eating whatever it is, and that will motivate them to take it out of their diet as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree, Brandy. I often say seeing is believing, right? So that's one area where running a food sensitivity test, you can talk to a client about removing some of these more common offenders or the lower hanging fruit, as I call it. Like it might be like gluten and dairy, maybe like soy, alcohol, some of those more common inflammatory triggers. And, it really depends on the client. Sometimes you'll be able to easily convince them to remove some of those foods. And in my opinion, I sort of don't care if those show up on a food sensitivity test or not. Like at a baseline, I want my clients to remove those foods. But you will occasionally get a client that is not entirely convinced that those foods are problematic until they see it on paper. And then that kind of serves as a more motivation and a more compelling case for them to remove those foods. Totally agree with that.
Thank you. My last question would just be, since the metabolic panel is no longer available, and that was like the 5th foundational lab, there's no real substitute for that one. What 5th lab are you running? HTMA or something else?
Yeah, so I'm sure Brandy has some insight into this as well. So I can answer that quickly because it has come up a lot. It's a common question, and so there are ways to kind of piece that together through some other clues on various different lab work. And I would say there in many cases there aren't necessarily direct replacements. There are good kind of clues or equivalents for some of those. So, for example, I would say that for the indican marker, which is kind of like a general marker for bacterial dysbiosis or poor digestion, those kinds of things going on, in a sense, the entire GI map as a whole sort of replaces that indican marker because, if you're seeing H. pylori, parasites, dysbiosis, low levels of digestion, low elastase, then you're probably going to have, you probably would have what's equivalent to an elevated indican, which that marker would have clued you in that there's some, there's bacterial putrefaction basically going on, of bacteria kind of chowing down on undigested protein and then as a result putting off elevated indican. So really everything you would need to see is going to be on the GI map in terms of what the indican would show you. Then there's that lipid peroxide marker, which is the marker that would be an indication of oxidative stress. Right. So, it's hard to find a direct equivalent for that one. There is an oxidative stress marker on the Dutch test. It's 8-hydroxy-DG. So that one it can potentially show you signs of oxidative stress. However, I've rarely seen that marker elevated, like very, very rarely. So I'm not sure like how clinically actionable or sensitive it is. So other than that, there's really not one that we have at the moment. And if I'm wrong, Brandy can correct me. But at the same time, keep in mind that your address protocols are going to address oxidative stress, right? So if someone is being exposed to lots of toxins, they're over-exercising, any of these contributors to oxidative stress, even infections can contribute to oxidative stress. Everything you're going to be implementing for them in terms of diet and lifestyle support would help to reduce that oxidative stress burden. Then what else? There's a third marker on there, UBAS, right? That's the liver function marker. So there's a marker on the GI map called beta-glucuronidase. It doesn't give you the same exact insight as the UBAS marker would have. But what that beta-glucuronidase marker on the GI map tells you, if it's elevated, is basically, without going into the complexities of it, that if it's elevated, it tells you that there's toxins getting recirculated back into the liver and that they're not getting excreted or fully metabolized. So in a sense, it's sort of like a pseudo liver marker. It does give you an insight into liver function, and if that marker is elevated, it's going to tell you there's a heavy burden on liver function. Again, kind of like the oxidative stress marker, your DRESS protocol is going to be supporting the liver. And given that the liver is such a vital organ and it's the largest internal organ in the body, that every client's going to need some liver support, and regardless, right, of what kind of markers we have or don't have, in the sense that it's a really like top performing organ and performs a lot of metabolic roles and is going to need a lot of help and assistance, especially when you're trying to kill off parasites or other organisms. That's going to result in a fair amount of die-off that the liver is going to need help processing. So in that sense, your clients are usually, in almost all cases, going to need some liver support supplements. They're going to need some adjunct therapeutic strategies, like whether it be, castor oil packs, dry brushing, infrared sauna, avoiding toxins in their cosmetics and personal care products, eating a nutrient-dense diet to support liver function, maybe things like milk thistle from an herbal approach. Binders are going to be pretty key with most clients and helping them to minimize die-off and bind up to all the gunk and toxins in the system. So we only have seconds left or so. Brandy, anything to add to that?
No, I agree with everything you said. I am going to tease that we are going to have an Indican test available for you guys to purchase that you guys can use at home. You don't have to send it back into the lab in the next couple of weeks. So keep your eye open for that. It will be on the medical director program menu, and we will send out an announcement. But everything else Ryan said rings true. You're going to need to support the liver for every single client. You don't really need test results for that. If they've got symptoms, they've got sluggish liver. So, I just take that approach with all of my clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. Everyone's going to need that kind of support. So guys, we've got to say goodbye. It's the end of the call here, but hope you all have a wonderful Friday. And thank you for calling in, and looking forward to talking with you guys next week. Have a great weekend.
Thanks. Have a great weekend, everyone.
All righty. Bye-bye, guys.